is not always easy to find unique and fun Halloween art ideas. So in this video, I'm going to give you all the watercolor painting tips you will ever need to do just that. We'll talk about where to find inspiration, how to set the mood for spooky art, and how to actually use watercolors to paint gorgeous Halloween icons. The most obvious places to go to for inspiration are free stock photo websites like Unsplash, Pexels, and Pixabay. This means you are allowed to paint these references without getting into copyright issues. For example, I found this creepy eyes reference on Pexels. You can type keywords like Halloween in the search bar, and a pro tip is to check out the artist directly once you have found something interesting, because most times there are a lot more photos on the artist page and you won't find those in the search results. Another way to find unique inspiration is through AI image generators, and hear me out on that one, because as controversial as these tools were just a few months ago, it seems that more and more artists use them now, and I'll let you decide if this is something you want to explore or not. The thing is, I wasn't even sure I was going to bring that up today because of all the harsh comments I've seen under other artists' videos. But then why make a tip video if I must hold back on what I think might help other people? So please, let's keep the discussions constructive and friendly. If you do decide to use this kind of tool, all you need to do is to type a very detailed prompt and a unique image will be generated each time. The true beauty in art, I think, is that we're able to go create anything that we want. So take any Halloween icon, for example, a dead tree, and this is one I painted last year. The way I shaped the branches made it look more spooky, the type that you would see in Halloween cartoons and movies. Take these small illustrations too. I started drawing the icons like I normally would for a realistic painting, but then I altered the shape just a little bit to make sure it was unique to my artwork and that it would fit the mood I was imagining. And for me, it's curvy and elegant lines. I try to do this for each element in my sketch, and even though my version still looks realistic, you could include more square shapes or wavy lines, for instance. I'd like to share a powerful tool that I have, and it's a book that is called Style Your Brand by Fiona Humberstone. I actually bought it for business on Kindle, and you wouldn't think at first glance that it would be useful for an artist, but I find the part about seasons to be really insightful for art. For example, what colors, what shapes, and even fonts will match the chosen season best. It's in the chapter called Create Your Vision. And it can be very interesting if you're looking for a way to find your style or if you like to paint according to seasons. You will find a link to the book in the description of my video in case you want to check it out. And if you need more help, you can refer back to the 2 previous tips, or if it's just a matter of understanding the Halloween vibe at a glance, Google Image will do. While Fiona Humberstone states that acrylics or gouache paints are going to be great for the fall season because of the texture, I'm guessing, with watercolor, we have everything that we need to render a beautiful fall or Halloween vibe. For example, for some of us, textured to rough papers might render the mood a bit better. And for others, it could be the color. And this distress type here is unique and already sets an atmosphere. For my illustration and for the spooky eyes painting, I went for simplicity with my favorite, the Arche 100% cotton cold pressed paper. It's very common, but I knew I'd feel comfortable painting magic on there. And that's probably because I think that everything looks good on this paper. With watercolor, we also have a bunch of choice for colors, and I think Halloween is a great time to take advantage of that. I can suggest a choice of beautiful autumn colors like warm yellows, vibrant reds, bright or deep greens, muted blues, chocolate browns, and purples. My idea for this eye painting was to strongly oppose light and dark tones, so I went more monochrome there. I picked a gorgeous color by Daniel Smith called Moonglow. I know that not everyone likes it because it's fugitive. It seems it will fade over time, but I don't think I have a long enough experience with it to confirm it. I love it because it's very dark. It's also a granulating paint with hints of blues and pinks. Here I left some very bright white highlights to contrast with this dark color. I just added a little bit of magenta and neutral tint, and that was really it. In this painting, however, I wanted the autumn vibe to also show. So I included those rich autumn tones like yellow, red, green, and blue, as well as, again, the dark and mysterious moon glow and the color called neutral tint, and these were going to be my shadow colors. Moon glow looks like a dark purple to me, so it really served the atmosphere I tried to set there. That was more of a witchy, cozy one. I could have picked deep browns instead to make it warmer and even more realistic, or used the black to make it more gloomy, but you get the idea. Besides, purple is a great color for Halloween. Before I explain my painting process with this magical cabinet painting, you can already practice the eye painting with me on Patreon in real time. I also made a Halloween series for my cherry on top patrons, so join us there to paint along. If you prefer more structure, I've also just published a new Skillshare class for early beginners in this vibe, and there you'll learn about watercolor techniques and how to stitch them together in the painting process. And I'll add a link to both Skillshare and Patreon in the description of the video in case you want to check them out. The theory and various tools are great, but we also need a strategy to paint fun Halloween art, and I always start with the first layer. It's especially important when you need those rich autumn colors to stand out against the darker Halloween colors. And that's why first I used my yellows, reds, greens, and blues as a base. For this cozy, witchy vibe I wanted in the cabinet, I went for creamy mixes of paint, which means they had water in them, but also a lot of pigment. I wanted to create a more illustrative and simple style than what I usually paint to make it more fun for the occasion, and I needed this base layer to really pop right away. That's why in this case, I think it's better to avoid adding too much water from the beginning because it makes the painting drag on for longer and it will require many more layers for vibrancy. I also made sure to have different colors appear together throughout the whole painting. And to do that, I overlapped them and I really tried to build some kind of consistency where, for example, red appears all over the painting. Sometimes it's subtle, but it's there. To make the process fast and easy, I also started adding the shadow color, moon glow, so it melts into the other paints beautifully. Then I added moon glow, neutral tint, and a little bit of red to paint the base on the shelves. And by the end of that first layer, I already had an almost finished painting. For my second layer, I went much darker with more moon glow and neutral tint, but I could have used black or even Payne's gray instead. The goal there was to start adding strong shadows to accent all the objects in the cabinet and the cabinet itself. My paint was a bit thicker then. The less water, the more the color shows and the more opaque it looks. If you're just going for gloomy, like I did with the eyes, then you can go for a monochrome painting or less vibrant tones overall. For me, it really helps to think about how I want the painting to look like before I even start, and I often make changes along the way, but that really helps. Even a simple painting needs some amount of detail, and in my own artwork, there's always a little something that I need to improve. I thought the painting lacked a little bit of color after adding the shadows, so I decided to glaze more of the vibrant tones on top of the previous layers for even more vibrancy, and again, this really depends on the mood that you want to create. Texture can look really nice. It adds a lot to any type of watercolor painting, and my favorite techniques to use are the splatters and the dry brush technique for this. And for example, these are some of the techniques that I covered in my Skillshare class. Also, very important, especially for Halloween, is to create more contrast with white highlights. Earlier, I already lifted some paint in places, and in this particular painting, I thought it would look magical to add some white gouache because of the transparency. So you see that the techniques and process matter, but in the end, it really comes down to what you like most. Last year, I was crazy about rounded corners in my paintings. I know that's weird, but it's beautiful, and that's an element that I pulled out of the book that I mentioned earlier. So for this cabinet, I decided to do the same, and I find that this can be such a nice addition if you're going to make some cards or a special Halloween painting. And I absolutely love how the magical cabinet turned out because it really matches what I had in mind. So even with a simple process and minimal detail, this is looking realistic and it fits the Halloween mood. And it's because there's really one thing that you want to pay attention to improve your watercolors. So you can watch that video here to learn more about that and enjoy more autumn vibes in the process. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.